And welcome to another edition of Two Steps Ahead podcast. In life, there's the next right step, which we all like to hopefully make. And if we don't make the right step, we might end up stepping in dog poop. We are Two Steps Ahead podcast, highlighting the stuff we've stepped in so you don't have to. I'm Son Edom, alongside somebody who is looking forward to the new year.
I am.
Whenever that might be.
Right. It might not be.
It might not be a calendar year.
Yeah.
It might be something else. Hey, on the show, we're going to try to delve into something that we probably take for granted and something that we think we might be experts at or we might be doing effectively, but maybe we're not. That's communication. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about communication. So, Tara, talk.
Yeah. Oh, that was in that.
Talk, communicate. No, but it's funny because people will think that, you know, like in the radio business, the communication business, radio business, communication always is poor. Mm-hmm. You know, people don't communicate. Messages from the top never get down to the bottom. Mm-hmm. Vice versa. You know, there's always information being spread back and forth. So, you know, there's always problems going on. So the thing I learned early on in radio was that, you know, there's a lack of communication in the communication business, or communication in the communication business is like the weakest thing. And so that topic, the whole topic of talking, communication is the focus of the show here today. So
yes, I've been wanting to talk about this communicate this for a long time. So today's the day finally that we're going to get into this. Yes.
It's your lucky day.
It is my lucky day. And the communication thing, like you mentioned in the radio, you know, world, that communication was like lacking, which is ironic, right? Because they're in the communication business, but we're all bringing something to the table. And the way that you can, find out, or the way that you can, analyze whether or not you're having good communication in your life is the amount of drama. So if you have a lot of drama, or like at work, if there's a lot of turnover, if there's a lot of, tension, if there's a lot of, you know, anger or passive aggressiveness, or things not getting accomplished, goals not being reached, or maybe the goal is reached, but it really took, like, it was pulling teeth, you know, getting there, and it's just really frustrating, or maybe there's deadlines being missed. All of that has a lot to do with the way that we communicate. So if your life is not going as smoothly as you would like, could be a lot of reasons for that, but I would guess that one of them is this idea of communication. So is your life smooth, or is it dramatic and chaotic, or somewhere in between?
Well, me personally?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty smooth because I don't talk to anybody. You don't talk to anybody or communicate to anybody. Life is easy street, baby. Easy street. Easy street. No, I mean, it's fine. The thing that I find interesting when you talk about that, though, is when the lack of communication is the misunderstanding.
Yes.
That pops up. You know, so for example, dealing with a situation where, I'm trying to get some stuff back, that someone borrowed, and there's a lack of communication, and that lack of communication is starting to fester ill will, you know, bad, you know, it's like, you know, it's pissing me off. And I'm sure the person on the other end is, you know, thinking I'm targeting them, with my messages, but it's just, hey, you know, respond, let's communicate, and we can resolve the issue. No problem. You know, there wasn't an expectation of resolution to the problem today. It was like, let's just communicate.
Right.
And let's resolve the issue. And so finally then I sent a message and I just said, hey, if we want to have a serious conversation about resolving this issue, let me know and I will make myself available, instead of going back and forth, or me going and not getting anything in return and then thinking, you know, oh, they're just giving me the big FU. So when you get into situations like that and you're not communicating, there's a lot of hurdles and bumps and misunderstandings and all kinds of things. When you are communicating in other relationships where the communication is going pretty good, then everything's fine. It's smooth. There's really, you know, no misunderstanding issues. There might be other issues, but, you know, you're not misunderstanding. Things aren't being taken out of context. You know, that's the other thing I find out is people will take something you say or whatever out of context and you're like, where'd that come from?
Right.
So it just kind of depends on, but for me personally, most of the time, I think I like to, say that I'm a good communicator. Now, it doesn't mean I talk all the time, but when I try to get my point across, I try to be as clear and concise as I can be to get the message there. You know, people might say, oh, you don't communicate well. Well, why not? Because you don't talk. Well, that's not just because you say something doesn't mean you're communicating. A lot of people will say words,
Right.
but they're not saying anything. They're not communicating. They're just talking, using a lot of words.
So playing devil's advocate, like, so then if communication isn't words, then what would communication be?
Well, communication, you're conveying a message from, let's say in this interpersonal communication, sending a message from one person to the next.
Mm-hmm.
I could give a wink. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying any words, but I'm communicating something.
Yes.
Body language. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying anything, but I'm communicating. Mm-hmm. When you sit and we're doing the podcast, I could sit here and just be like aloof. God, what's she saying now? Well, I'm not saying anything.
So typical podcast. Yes. No.
Well, I'm not saying anything. I'm like, please wrap it up. But I'm communicating a message of uninterest. Students, they communicate all kinds of information and they never say a word when you're in class.
Yeah.
So when you're conveying a message, or conveying information, and there's different layers too, because if it's a business situation, if it's a personal relationship, but yeah, there'll be times where you could be talking to somebody and it could be idle chit chat about a song that comes on the radio or whatever. But is that true communication or are you just talking?
Yeah. So I would say, there are different reasons for communication. One, like you said, is to get the message across, like we want something or we want, that other person to, like you wink at someone, then you're conveying like, I like you, you're sexy, good job, I'm here for you. There's all kinds of things, that a wink can mean, but it's kind of like a, camaraderie type of thing, depending on who you're winking at and why you're winking, but it could be innocent or it could not be innocent. But, so I would say that communication is to, send a message of what we want or what we desire. It's also to build community, right? So idle chit chat sometimes seems to be frivolous. Other times it's building rapport. It's building trust. It's finding out about the other person. So I would say, building community is another reason for communication. Accomplishing a goal, creating or finishing a project, is another form of why we need to communicate in an effective way, because we want to get from A to Z in the most economical way, right? We want to spend the least amount of money. We want to get there the fastest and we want to have a quality and quantity, right? And so if we're not communicating properly, there's going to be a whole lot of drama in between. There's going to be all kinds of, chaos and tensions. And then people start bringing in their baggage, in that communication. They bring in their passive aggressiveness. They bring in their anger, their codependencies. That all gets funneled into our communication. And so the reason why I wanted to bring up this subject today is because, this is one of the things that annoy me to no end. It's one of the things that I question the most, especially this year in 2020. And it's one of the things that, I just kind of like scratch my head and then I think, okay, how can we make this better? How can I make the communication better in my own life? How can we make the communication better in society? And there's all these different, I know, last episode or a couple episodes ago, we talked about some of the things that have gone on in 2020. There's been so much communication. I don't know that we've accomplished a whole lot, but there's been a whole lot of talking and a whole lot of communication and a whole lot of misunderstanding and a whole lot of frustration over a lot of these issues. So I just wanted to bring up some of these issues. I'm going to take a neutral position. My point in bringing these up is not to take a side or take a stance, but to highlight the chaos that is coming from some of these issues. I just wanted to bounce some of these off of you and see what you think, or see if you agree, disagree, whatever. So
disagree.
I know, right?
Am I right?
I should give you a card. Like disagree.
Agree.
Don't agree.
Disagree. Like the red ping pong paddle, the green ping pong paddle.
Yes, we should have one of those. I have a notepad over here.
Disagree.
Okay, so let's talk about the mask, because I know that's a highly contentious thing, going on. So this whole idea, and I want to stick to the way that we communicate about it as opposed to getting into the details. So we started off in this pandemic, and where they're saying, okay, this pandemic is coming. We don't have a vaccine. People are going to, and of course the numbers were, off the charts. People could get sick. People could die, all this stuff. And it's worldwide. It's not just here. It's all over the world. So everyone, in all the different countries, especially here in the United States, were like, okay, wear the mask. Then it became this sort of like political thing somehow, like, don't wear the mask. So then it became throughout this year, it became kind of like the Republicans have a tendency not to wear the mask. The Democrats have a tendency to wear the mask, right? It's kind of sort of what it's come down to, at the end, of this year is like, there's this divide on that. And I'm looking at the way that we communicate. So yesterday I saw a video that was posted by Joe Rogan, and I love Joe Rogan's podcast. I've watched several episodes, but he posted.
Agree.
There you go. The first agree. So he posted this video on his Instagram yesterday, and it was slamming the Democratic leaders for being hypocritical about wearing the mask, right? And so I think it was Governor Newsom, Mayor Garcetti, who was the other one? Chris Cuomo on CNN. And so the video was them saying, to wear the mask, to not go anywhere for Thanksgiving, don't travel. But then they, Garcetti and Cuomo, Governor, I just said it, Governor Newsom and Mayor Garcetti, they both went places. And so the video had this guy narrating and saying like what a joke this was, that like you're asking us to do this, but then you're not doing it yourself. Right. So there's communication right there first. And then I was reading all of the comments about the video, and people were clearly frustrated. And they were starting to argue, and they were getting into the merits of, whether or not to wear the mask, or where some hospitals are overflowing and some are not overflowing, depending on the area that you're in. Right. So there's this debate, and I'm just wondering, like, and then the debate gets bigger because it's like, okay, if we don't want to shut down the economy, and then we don't want to, we still want to have businesses. We still want to go out and about, but then we don't want to wear the mask. We don't want to lock things down. And then there's all these side arguments. It's like, okay, well, if we lock things down, mental illness is going up. People are losing their businesses. Kids are not doing well in school. And then the nurses are like, please wear the mask. Please stay home, because they're in the front line. And so there's this communication going back and forth. And I have a tendency to be in the middle. Like, I agree with both sides, but the fact that we have sides and we're not on one collective team is troublesome to me, and it bothers me a great deal. And the way that and so this could be an event like in your family, this could be like anything going on at the workplace or whatever. It's that there's these two sides that can't seem to communicate in a way that acknowledges what the other people are going through and what the other people are bringing to the table. Like, I think it's horrible that people are losing their jobs right now. Mm-hmm. I think it's horrible that businesses are closing. It's terrible. Our economy, the toll that this is taking is completely awful. On the other side of it, I had a friend in my, a group that I lead, a Zoom group that I lead. She works at a local hospital here, locally. And she said that the hospital is overburdened. It's full. So they don't have room to really take any more patients. And I said, well, what's going to happen if more patients come in? And she says, well, they're going to be in the hallway. And she says, the nurses are all stressed out. She says, and then the medical, on this particular hospital, she says I don't know why they're not opening up like the convention center, bringing the ship back. Like, we're like, right now we're handling it. But if the cases go up, like they're saying, we're not going to be able to handle it. And so she was like, she's on this other side, like, people are just not wearing the mask. Like, they just don't care anymore because we're all tired and we're all fatigued. So this communication about, people taking sides is not helping. is just not helping, and it's getting worse. And we could pick, the social unrest that we've gone through this year. We could pick, the election, leading up to the presidency. There's all kinds of ways that we communicate. And in particular, I brought up the mask. And so you have, Governor Newsom saying, and it could be a Republican. I'm not picking on the Democrats because, I think everyone, I look at all politicians the same. I'm not picking on a particular party. But, he's saying don't travel, and then he travels, or don't attend, we have to stay home. And then he's I think he was the one that was at a 50th birthday party or something indoors. So he's giving a mixed message, and he's not following through. So he doesn't have integrity. So when we don't have integrity and honesty, look at the chaos that this is causing. So Joe Rogan, and I'm not bashing Joe Rogan. I love Joe Rogan's podcast, not bashing him at all. But look at the chaos of the video that somebody made that he reposted, and now it's igniting the masses again, and everybody's fighting about, and we're not on the same page. This is so disturbing to me to live in a society that we conduct ourselves that way.
Hell no, we won't go.
Agree, disagree, not agree. No, I'm kidding.
I haven't seen the video, so I'm not too in tune with the particulars. But when you talk about messages, I think it goes back to what we've talked about many times. People try to put everything in a box, and one message for all, one size fits all, and you can't do that.
You can't do it.
So when you talk about the politicians and their hypocrisy, well, yeah, you're sending mixed messages. So if you can do it, I can do it.
Exactly.
So right there, the message then should be, okay, as you know, as a leader, you have to now be more scrutinized in what you do. And we've seen it. Like you said, it doesn't matter. We've seen the mayor of Denver. We've seen the lady in Chicago. We've seen the lady in Michigan. We've seen the dude up in Sacramento. We've seen some people, down in Texas or Florida, maybe not the politicians, but the citizens. So we've seen all different kinds of people do all different kinds of things. And there's no unification as far as leadership. Right. As to what we can do. So the communication is, there's not a message that's being put out there that people are confident about receiving. Right.
On both sides. Yeah. Right. And because I don't know about you, but because I'm an editor, because I'm a writer, I look at whenever I see anything, hear anything, or watch anything visually, I'm editing what it is, that they're saying. And I don't hear on either side. I'm not bashing or praising either side. I think they're both equally equal. But they don't seem to acknowledge, we've talked about the pros and cons before. I don't hear them acknowledging, they have their agenda, but they don't acknowledge the downside to what this will do. So it's like, okay, stay away from each other. Do not go out in public.
You are less than 6 feet from me.
Right? Right.
But see, that's the thing. It's like,
but then they don't acknowledge, say, yes, however, I do understand that this is affecting people's mental health. I do understand that people are losing businesses, and that's not okay either. And even though I'm telling you to stay away from each other, because the other thing that this lady said in my group, the lady that works at the hospital, the other thing she said was, it's the weirdest thing up in the COVID unit, because people can be walkie-talkies and look like they're fine. 3 hours later, they can be dead. She says it is the strangest thing. Like all of a sudden they'll code, or they'll go into arrest or something, and we'll put them on a ventilator, or we'll attend to them, whatever. And she says, and then they die. And she says, you don't know. She's like, there was a 24-year-old that died. There was an 80-year-old that it's just so bizarre. So in her, and that's not, people, I hear people say CNN is calamity. Somebody said the other day, Calamity Central or Fear Central, something. That's not coming from any TV station. That's coming from someone who actually works in the hospital. And so I feel like when the leaders talk about or communicate about something, they're not taking into consideration you and you and you and you and you and you and you. You who works at the hospital, you who lost your job, you who lost your business, you who is high risk, you who is, whatever. I feel like we have like our side and we're defending our side and we're not like acknowledging, okay, yes, this is what I want. However, it is going to affect all of this and this is not okay.
See, as the consumer of the information, let's say talking about the mask coming from the politicians or the experts, you see an inconsistency.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for me, I've always come from a perspective of reason and logic. Okay. So I'm told A, for me, if I do get it, there is a 99.997% chance that I'm going to be fine. I may not have symptoms. I'm going to be okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. Good news for me. If you're older or have pre-existing conditions, no bueno. Okay. Sorry. Bad news. Okay. So then it's like, okay, now let's make blanket statements. Everybody wear a mask. Well, wait a minute. I'm losing my job and I have to wear a mask and it's not going to affect me. But yet it's for them. So we're getting these mixed messages. And I think and then you throw in biases. And I'm not talking about personal biases, but experience biases. If someone loses a job, that's going to affect, how you what message you want to hear about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask versus somebody that does have a job. If your job is a nurse and you see it firsthand, then your experience is going to be different than someone that might not have experience. I don't know anybody that has COVID, to be honest. Like, unless someone posts on social media, I don't know anybody.
I've known 3 so far.
See that. So my perspective would be different.
It's getting closer.
It's coming, but the message is being, convoluted. And I think that's part of the problem and then people give up on those people that say, do something, but I'm gonna go do something else. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Right.
So,
and then it causes us to be like, well, screw it then. I'm just not going to do, because I don't know who to believe. I don't know who to listen to. I don't know who to, so I'm just whatever.
So let's take this lockdown. So, the latest one that we're currently in as of this conversation, the first thing I hear is everybody's like, oh, not again. But then the city of Pasadena, we're closing our restaurants, we're closing down curfews, we're closing everything down, okay? Stay at home order. But then the city of Pasadena comes out and says, you know what? Wait a minute. We have our own health department. We have our own hospitals. So we're going to do our own thing and we're going to coordinate with our people because this is what affects us. What's happening in the city of Long Beach isn't reflect what we do. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Someone is now conveying a message that I'm interested in it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, restaurants in Pasadena, as of this conversation, are still open. But what they've done is
outside,
right?
Yeah.
We can sit outside, outdoor dining. So, okay, that makes sense. So, but curfew's at 10 now. Okay, that makes sense. So you start to put things together and you start to see a message of, okay, if I want to go eat, I still can. I can eat outdoors where apparently the experts have said that it's safe. So the message is now being consistent. Message from the top, experts say eating outside and social distancing is fine. The city says that's what we're going to imply. And so now the message is starting to flow within those guidelines. Okay. If you approach, we ask you to wear a mask. Okay. You may or may not want to, but let's say for the courtesy of others, we do, but then we can take them off when we get there. Okay. That all makes sense to me. Whether I wear a mask or not, me following these guidelines then is going to protect me, protect you, and I can still enjoy. I go to another restaurant. This was a few months ago when we could still do outdoor dining with no mask. The word was, after every bite, please put your mask back on.
I know, it's so silly.
Okay, seriously? Okay.
Like, what are we doing then? Might as well not be there.
So the flow of message, if it's consistent, I think people would embrace it. And it's like with anything, when a new boss comes in and wants to make changes, everybody's resistant to change. But the good bosses will convey a message of, I'm not going to change things just because I want to. Here's my reasoning for change. Here's my reasoning for doing things a certain way, because my experience has shown that if we do it this way, A, B, C, D, then we can be more productive. We can be more efficient. You guys can have more time off, whatever. And then it makes sense. So I think when it comes to like the mask, the communication is the mixed message is confusing everybody. And in that confusion, there becomes frustration. And then frustration leads to, like a little kid, you act out.
Right. And I think the mixed messages are coming from everywhere. They're coming from the president. They're coming from the, CDC has kind of been back and forth a couple of times, but also they are learning, because this is a new thing. And so they're learning. They just changed the quarantine from 14 to 7 days. So they're learning as we go. So that causes some confusion because now it was that and now it's this, right? Each individual governor of each individual state has a different idea. The mayors of cities across the country have different ideas. We don't have a national message. We don't have a national coherency. And it gets very convoluted. And then people just give up and they're like, whatever. And so my question is, it's very easy to point fingers, but we can't change other people. And we can't affect, I can't affect what the president does or what the governor or the mayor does, in my particular area. But we can learn from, okay, why is there so much confusion going on and so much chaos going on in our society right now? And why are there so many mixed messages going on? One is, this video and you mentioned multiple, we've had multiple videos come out, right, of governors and mayors saying, don't do this, and then they go out and do it. So one is that we need to walk the walk.
Right, exactly.
We need to have honesty and character. And it really baffles me is that we are all suffering from a lack of character in our leadership from top to bottom, but yet people say character doesn't matter. I don't care about character. I just care about my 401k, or I just care about my job, or I just care about whether or not I'm healthy. I'm happy having everything locked down because, so as on both sides, it's like they don't care. We only care about what affects us personally, what we think affects us personally. But we're all suffering from a lack of character because a mixed message is not character. Not being honest, telling lies is not good character. Not having a cohesive message that we can all buy into is not good character. So the chaos that we are experiencing right now on so many different levels doesn't have to be this way. It's solvable, but it floors me that every single one of us is reaping, not the benefit, but reaping the benefit of this lack of character. We're all feeling it. We're all feeling the pain and the punishment of lack of character in every aspect of our society. And yet we say, oh, character doesn't matter. And I'm like, wait a second. But that's what's causing all of this confusion. No matter what side you're on, it doesn't matter. We are all suffering from a lack of character from A to Z, from top to bottom. And yet we could go around saying, character doesn't matter. I don't understand that. That has confused me this entire year and has caused me to what just happened? WTF, where are we? And what is that? You can't have one without the other. And I've gotten into so many arguments. There was somebody that said to me, well, I don't care about their character. I just want them to, you can't look at, what did they say? You can't look at how they behave. You just have to look at how they lead. I was like, what? How do you separate that? Are they one and the same? I'm just so confused by this whole.
I think there's also the credibility of the message. I mean, I think back to the boy that cried wolf. Mm-hmm. The message was, there's a wolf here, there's imminent danger. Somebody comes running, ha ha, just a joke. Mm-hmm. Then eventually it comes to the point where he does say, hey, this is a wolf here and it's for real. No one comes, mm-hmm. and there's a disastrous result from that. Mm-hmm. And so I think, too, when it comes to some things on the national level, the political level, you're looking at people who don't, trust the messenger because of whatever reasons, mm-hmm. And those could vary. Mm-hmm. The messenger has proven himself to be untrustworthy, mm-hmm. By actions, word, and deed. Mm-hmm. The unknown, people don't have all the information, and we saw from the social dilemma that misinformation spreads faster, mm-hmm. By a rapid rate than the truth. Mm-hmm. And so what do we really know? Mm-hmm. And so if you look at a nurse in a hospital that sees firsthand what's going on, mm-hmm. and then you have someone like me that hasn't been affected by it at all yet, there's two different messages. Mm-hmm. There's a disconnect. Okay, what's affecting me? And then I use me as an example because then I take a look at what the experts say. It's like, I'm a 99.997, mm-hmm. Maybe no symptoms. I could be asymptomatic. It's not even going to bother me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it hasn't affected you physically, but it has affected you economically.
Well, yeah. As far as people that actually know it. Yeah. As far as people that have actually been sick or not sick. And so then I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, if I'm being told that it's no big deal to me, but now I'm being locked down. That's almost like saying that, oh, my neighbor committed a crime and I'm going to jail with them for it. It's like, it doesn't make sense. And so the message isn't being sent there. Something, and this isn't what we should do, but something along the lines of coming out and being, you know what? We don't know. Things are going to change. We might say one thing now, but because of the ongoing circumstances, we might need to change what we say to something else. Something like that in this case might have been more effective. You take the governor of New York. He was the one, for example, talk about credibility and message. Okay, granted, he may not have known, but he says, okay, let's put people with COVID in nursing homes. Disastrous effects. Well, he never came out and apologized or anything. And he never owned that. And then he tried to deny it. Okay. So now he loses all credibility and people see it with his message. Okay. Granted, the guy didn't know. Nobody knew.
Right.
He's not the only one. New York was just hit the hardest.
Right.
And so he's going to be under the microscope more. He could have come out and said, okay, that was a bad idea. We didn't know, but we've learned from that. Now we know we need to do something different. There'd be more credibility in the message. But since then, people have lost all credibility in his message because he didn't own up to it. And he's like, I wasn't me.
So, yeah, and you make an excellent point because there have been so many people in the media, whether it is a politician or a movie star or TV star or whatever, there have been so many people that are in a situation and they deny or they blame or they rationalize or anything to get the attention off of the mistake that they made, whether it was the affair, whether it was the, making a bad decision for COVID and, all those people dying in the nursing homes. Like, it's really hard for us to admit our mistakes. But like you said, if they would just say, like, I made a mistake, if they would just say that, you're right, there would be a lot more credibility. But why is it so hard for us? Because that is part of the confusion. So that's why I started off at the beginning of this podcast saying, not you specifically, but in general, how much drama, like, you'll know if the communication in your life isn't going well. You'll know by how much drama is in your life and how much chaos and confusion. How much energy do you spend talking to people and arguing or having tense conversations or chasing people down or whatever? And that's a big indicator of the type of communication. And I think that we're seeing on a national level, the level of chaos and the level of anger and frustration and depression and just on and on and on, because we cannot bring it to ourselves just to be honest. And we can say, like, we can, point to the people on TV and say, oh my gosh, like, and I've said it 100 times, why don't they just admit it? Like Bill Clinton was a classic example, just say it already. And some of these other governors and some of these other, people just like admit it over. Like, why make us go through months and months and months and months of investigation when you know darn well there's evidence or lack of evidence? And, why put us through all that? Right. And we have as human beings, we have such a hard time admitting our mistakes because the fallout, we just don't know what the fallout is. And so we have to, the only thing that we can do, because we can't change other people, the only thing we can do is practice it ourselves. And we do the same thing. It's easy to point fingers and say, okay, if he would just say, yeah, I put people in nursing homes, they died, it was the wrong move, I'm sorry. Like, if he would just say that, you're right, his credibility would go way up. But we have to ask ourselves, like, okay, when is the last time that we, I'll just give a bunch of examples. When's the last time that we did something in the checkbook and our spouse didn't know? Or when is the last time we were supposed to do like some sort of a chore or some sort of something and we didn't do it, or we did something different, spent money when we weren't supposed to, any number of things. And what do? It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Or I've had that for a while. Or that was a necessary, thing. Or we pay cash instead of a check so that it's not, so we can't, there's no trail, right? And so we hide it. Or we get extra cash from the grocery, You know, you pay for groceries and the groceries are $80. You get, you know, $20 cash. Oh, the groceries were $100 and you put $20 in your pocket, right? So I think the only thing that we can do, I think, in this madness is to, I know it sounds cliche, but like to be the people who we want them to be. Because we have to look at ourselves and like, am I doing that? And the answer is yes. I do it. Like, I deny things. Like, I don't want to be in trouble either. I don't want to look bad, because if we look bad, I don't know, like, you might make fun of me. You might not want to be my friend anymore. You might, I mean, we're not married, but if we were, like, you might want a divorce, or you might leave me or something. Like, there's all these repercussions because of communication, that we're not on the same page, that we are afraid of the fallout. I mean, look, I'll say this because, just for context, I'm a registered, Republican, and, I know, right? I'm going to change my political affiliation. I'm a registered Republican, and I am so mad, so angry at the Republican, senators and congressmen and everything right now, for everything. Like, I don't understand. They're more concerned with their own career than they are with the good of the country. And that makes me mad, because they're not working with integrity. And so we have to look at, am I doing it too? Am I getting the $20? Am I hiding things? Am I being deceitful? Am I manipulating things to make things look better? We have to ask ourselves that. We have to start there. And then we have to insist on people being honest with us and not ignoring it, not defending it, not taking sides and saying, okay, it wasn't okay to lie. Now it is okay to lie. I'm like, what? So I think we are participating in what we accept. We're participating in what we don't, call out, but we also participating in doing the same thing. We're pointing fingers at other people and then doing the same thing ourselves. So we also are being hypocrites, as we call these politicians hypocrites.
There's a movie that I like to watch. It's Moneyball with Brad Pitt.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
He plays the general manager of the Oakland A's, Billy Beane, and he's got his sidekick who is kind of like a protege of sorts. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to this conversation about having to deal with players that were traded or dropped, sent down to the minors. And so he does this exercise. Brad Pitt's character does this exercise with his, protege. Okay, we just acquired somebody, or so we have to send somebody, or we traded somebody. What do you tell them? Mm-hmm. And so then the protege's character is like, well, we've traded you to another team. And then Brad Pitt's character says, well, I just bought a house. My kids are in school. And then the other guy's trying to explain that away. And then Billy Beane, or Brad Pitt's character, basically says, no, stick to the basics. You've been traded. Here's the information, the people that are going to contact you. We wish you the very best. Just leave it as that. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because and later on then he has to do that. And he's all nervous. The kid's all nervous that there's going to be blowback. The guy's going to yell at him, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And he basically says, Carlos, you've been traded. Here's the information to the traveling secretary. They're going to be in touch with you. Mm-hmm. We wish you the best. Mm-hmm. The guy gets up and he leaves. And then there's a big sigh of relief, right? Yep. But the thing is I think there's that to a certain degree with communication, is that if you're, deal with the facts at hand, deal with what's pertinent, mm-hmm. what's important. Some of the other stuff that people might bring up isn't necessarily pertinent to the conversation. Mm-hmm. The fact that somebody's kid's in school and they have a house is important to them, but it's not pertinent to the information of the conversation. And so if we can keep that in, and so I learned from that was to keep that in check. If I'm having a conversation, have a conversation on that topic.
Right. You have to stick to, you don't want to bring out the history. You don't want to bring out, there's time for that. Sometimes you have to talk about the history if there's a pattern of behavior that is, causing, damage that needs to be addressed. But yeah, in general, you want to have a conversation where it's like, okay, we need to stick to the topic. you pulled, money from the account. We're just going to talk about, that. We can talk about the other things later. So there is an art to the way that we communicate with each other. But again, we have to look at our blind spots, and we have to be willing to acknowledge that we have blind spots, and we have to be willing to acknowledge that, the way that we are communicating could probably be infinitely better. And we are doing a lot of things that we don't even realize that is sabotaging the very thing that we want. Right. And so by playing games, by, hiding, manipulating, rationalizing, we don't realize that we are participating in the chaos that we're trying to get rid of. If we would just be straightforward and just, accept our weaknesses and highlight, our side of the equation. Yeah, this was my fault. This was my side of it. I think we would be a lot better off. But this whole conversation, and even not just the mass, the mass thing is making everybody crazy, but because there are a lot of mixed messages, and I don't think that everybody is being addressed, with the mass thing. I don't think everyone's being addressed in the lockdown. It's like one side is talking about mental illness. The other side's talking about, I should be able to do whatever I want. The other side is okay, but this and then that and then this. And we're not bringing everybody to the table and addressing everybody's needs. And then, okay, well, what is best for the team? I might not want to wear it, but what's best for the team? This hospital might be overflowed, but this one may not be. So we don't need to be on a lockdown the way that you're on. So we need to be able to voice that too. And I think when we get to the point where we can address the pros and cons of, I don't want to say sides, because as soon as we say sides, then we're already off track. But if we can address the pros and cons of the situation and make sure that everyone is represented so that everyone has a voice, I think that would calm things down quite a bit.
Well, everybody has an agenda too. That's the thing that we have to be careful too, like you're talking about, because you take politicians, for example, and there's an agenda. One side wants to do something. The other side wants to do something different. So the followers of side A are going to respond a certain way. Their communication is going to be a certain way. The information they want to receive and give is going to be a certain way. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the Joe Rogan video, those that are maybe anti-maskers are going to be a certain way versus those that are pro-maskers. Mm-hmm. But then look at the other thing. You talk about politicians, and again, this isn't a political thing, just a purely objective, communicative thing. Adam Schiff was very vocal in a special prosecutor, in impeachment for Russia collusion, etc. Okay, mm-hmm. So he's all for that. Okay, mm-hmm. That was his communication. He is for this. So I guess AG Barr just came out and said that the Durham investigation has moved now from Durham being an investigator to a special counsel. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now Adam Schiff has come out and said that's horrible. We can't have special counsels. Mm-hmm. Okay, well here's a guy that now has just changed his communication mm-hmm. from one to the next. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you're telling me that if it fits your agenda, it's okay to do X, Y, Z. If it doesn't fit your agenda, then it's horrible, it's evil, it's demonic. Mm-hmm. And that's the example to me that demonstrates what's going on in America. Mm-hmm. It's okay, take the Obamacare, healthcare. Okay, people are oh, it's bad, it's this, that. For me, being objective, one of the things that came out of it that I thought was good was pre-existing conditions. Mm-hmm. There was nothing for that. And people that are getting sick, and now with COVID and things like that, there's going to be pre-existing. Mm-hmm. So you have to kind of look at things, because we all have our bias, we all have an agenda. But if you really sit back and look at things, someone the other night was asking me about healthcare. Should everybody have healthcare? And my comment was, well, healthcare and immigration reform go hand in hand, mm-hmm. because you don't want the whole world's population coming to America just to get free healthcare. Because we can't afford that. We can't sustain that. It's not sustainable. We can't sustain COVID in certain areas because it's overwhelming hospitals. Imagine if the entire world came to our country just to get insurance. Mm-hmm. It would overwhelm our medical system. We'd be in the same boat. So again, the idea for me was you can't just look at one thing in this case, healthcare, mm-hmm. and make a blanket statement, yes or no. What about the young kid that came when he was 17 or when he was a young kid? His parents came and now he's 16, 17 playing a sport in high school, gets hurt. Well, maybe he's not a citizen and he's here, a dreamer, DACA, whatever, but does that exclude him from health care? Mm-hmm. We have to look at things from a different perspective, which takes, I think, some training on ourselves and to move past our biases and our agendas to say, what's the common good? And when you talk about communication, that's one of the things that we have to do. If we're communicating something, if I'm a leader at war and I'm the lieutenant leading a platoon in war, there's no communication. I'm going to tell you what's up and you're going to follow it. That's a chain of command. Well, hopefully in me doing that, I'm not going to get a mutiny because my actions and my words are going to be consistent, clear, and hopefully for the best of my troops. If I am in a boardroom and there's multiple board members and we're debating stuff about what's best for the company, there might be more give and take because it's more of a different thing. Okay, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Why can't we merge these ideas? And then you come to kind of like a consensus. So I think each individual situation, we can't just blanket statement anything. We have to look at what's the situation. We have to look at what's the agenda behind the situation. You know, for you going shopping and putting the extra 20 in, what's the purpose for that? Is it because you want to buy a gift for your husband and you don't want him to know? And so you're hiding some extra money along the way so that then you can, surprise him and he had no idea because he looks at the checkbook and he doesn't see any money missing. And all of a sudden, oh, where'd this come from? Surprise. Or is it because you're going to go do something else with that money? So there's a perspective there in what you're going to do as far as your intent, your agenda. So if you come and he says, is there money missing? Oh, no, I was shopping. Well, you're trying to hide the money because you want to spend it on a gift for his birthday or Christmas or whatever without him knowing. Or are you hiding the money because you don't want him to know because you're doing something else with it? I mean, so for me, when you're communicating, there's a specific purpose behind the communication. And what is that? And what's the message of it? Sure, we have to do the CIA lie because we don't want the truth out there as far as things because we have a mass pandemic. So yeah, maybe we don't want the whole world to know that we're all going to die. But then on the flip side, you had a guy that came out and said 2 million people are going to die with COVID. I think it was the Yale or Harvard model. And so everybody responded to 2 million people dying. Well, he was wrong too. So again, you're dealing with communication and you're dealing with information, but we have to be able, like you said, to sit back and be like, you know what? We have no idea what this was about. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to probably have misinformation. Things might change. But yet when we approach it, we need to make sure that we approach, because what's good for LA isn't good for Wyoming, isn't good for some other place. The message here in California is that, Disneyland needs to be closed because it's bad. It's a super spreader. You look at Florida, they've been open. Disney World's been open. I know people from California that have gone to Disney World because they need their fix. And there's no outbreaks, pandemics, or anything. So there's a mixed message being sent. So, okay, maybe it comes down to this governor wants to do that. This governor wants to do that. Okay, that's fine. That's how it is. Okay, in this case. So maybe there's not one answer that fits both. He just decided that's good for his state. He wants to do it. That's good for his state. And so that's something that you could have two different opinions, and that's fine. But again, it takes a little bit of looking. It takes a little bit of understanding. And the other thing, the other component, which I was going to bring up earlier that I forgot until just now, is listen. The other part of communication is listening. We're quick to speak, but are we going to listen to what's being told to us?
And take it into consideration.
Right. So you can come to me and be like, hey, I want to do this topic for the podcast. And I'd be like, no. Or I could be like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Or maybe we can do this. Or, hey, how should this setup be? Or what should I wear? And then you could take it into consideration, but you're at least listening to the information. And then, yes, some people in certain situations have to be in a position where they have to make a decision, and it's a tough one. Others might make a decision based on their agenda, and it's clear that it's an agenda-based decision only to benefit them, and so they're going to get hit harder for it. But we can't really look at, I think, like anything with one box, and everything fits in that one box, and everything needs to be the same. And I think that true leadership, and that means even the leader of the conversation, is going to take into account everything that's being done and consider everything that's being said and listen to it and then form an opinion back.
Right. And that is for, hopefully when that leader does that, is for the good of the team and not for an individual group or an individual agenda or an individual side. And we don't do that. And so I think we have to start insisting that our leaders start doing that, because if we don't take into account, if we don't listen to all the different sides and all of the different, variations going on, because there's a lot of sections of society that are really hurting and that are really being damaged by all of this chaos, this poor communication, this lack of trust, the lack of honesty, the lack of integrity, the lack of character. Like, we are all being damaged by it. And, if we don't, so the only thing that we can do is to look at ourselves and say, am I doing it too? And a lot of times we are, because I see people arguing on social media. We get on one side or the other and we defend that side, and we're not really like, okay, let me try and, somebody, there was a person not too long ago who shall remain nameless. No, it wasn't you, but it was, blocked me because they didn't like what I said. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, are we in kindergarten right now? It was ridiculous, right? So I think that we have to insist in ourselves that we practice these concepts. It's easier for us to point fingers and say, because we can look at the, like you said, people have agendas. And so like the CDC or, Fauci and, whatever, I'm not dissing anybody. I'm just bringing up, like, they have their agenda. Like, they're seeing all these, sick people in the medical community. And my friend, that works at the hospital, she said, only 1% of the population is sick right now. And the medical system is like burdened. It's really burdened right now. And so if 2 or 3% of our population of the United States is sick at the same time, there's going to be people, we're going to have to open up the convention centers. You're going to have to bring the ships back. You're going to have people's going to be in the hallways. People are going to be dying because there's not ICU beds. Like, our medical system just can't handle everybody being sick at the same time. It's not so much that people are going to die, but it's that it just cannot handle everybody being sick at the same time. So in their side, they're saying, please wear the mask. It's not about like, personal, whatever. It's just like, we can't the medical system simply does not have enough beds for everyone to be sick at the same time. We just don't have that capability. Then the other side is, we need to open the economy. We need to, people need to get back to work. We can't be losing these businesses. People are, depressed and suicide is up and domestic abuse and violence and all these things are up. And so we need to get people back out into society and back together, because we need to, like, how do you manage those two things alone? Those are two opposing things. One says stay away because our medical system cannot handle more than 1% of us being sick at the same time. It'll be a disaster. And then the other side saying we cannot stay apart. We must come back together because people are being abused. People are depressed and, dying and losing their homes. And there's going to be people living on the streets. So like, how do you, I think that's the thing, is like, how do you bring those two those are both very legitimate. Both of those arguments, I agree with both. They're very legitimate. And it's like, but how do you bring those two people to the table and get everybody on board? Be like, okay, this is not about you. It's about this person, that person. We all need to work together for the greater good. We can't overtax. We can't have everybody sick at the same time. And we can't have people at home losing jobs and businesses at homes and mentally depressed. We can't have either one of them. Neither one of them are okay. So then it's like, so I think the solution is for us to be trustworthy within ourselves and have integrity within ourselves and be honest. We have to practice it within ourselves and be like, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm going to own up to it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to, play games. I'm not going to manipulate. I'm just going to be honest. And if we insist on that in ourselves and then insist on that with the people around us that we work with and our family, maybe it'll get better.
My experience, I've learned over the years that, sometimes we like to candy coat things. People ask us something, we want to candy coat it and kind of beat the bush and be like, okay, because you don't want to hurt their feelings.
Right.
But I've also learned that it's also easier just to kind of, in a tactful way, just be upfront and be straightforward. Thus the Moneyball example, because in the end, I think the person on the other end appreciates that and respects that.
It gives them their dignity rather than playing games with them.
And so, and I've learned it's actually easier.
It is
easier. So, whatever, take any example. Why don't you like me? well, it's because and this. Well, because you're rude and you're mean. I don't know. I don't know what a good example is.
Yeah, but, No, I get it.
You like my hair? Well, no, not really, because I think you look better in long hair. I mean, I don't know. But when you're straightforward, it tends to sometimes get easier once you get accustomed to it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to offend the other person. But then on the flip side, by candy coating it, they then find out the truth, and now that hurts even more.
People pleasers are not trustworthy people. They are just not.
You have to just kind of be, and so a lot of people that know me know that I'm pretty much straightforward and say it like call it like I see it, hopefully in a tactful way. But you just have to condition yourself to be that,
And it's not just giving honest information to the other person. It's allowing honest information over ourselves. Like, okay, am I doing this too? Well, am I an honest person? Am I really acting with integrity?
So before everything was locked down, I'd go out, hang out with people, and then, hey, you coming out? I'm going to hang out with us tonight? No, why not? I don't want to. Versus, I got this, and this. No, I just want to.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
And then they just move on. Oh, he doesn't want to. And then move on. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as that makes it easier than going through all this stuff, just don't want to.
Yeah.
And, but when it comes down, you can't really simplify this or put this into one or two or three things because it's very complex. But one, consistency is one thing. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be a leader, if you're going to be someone that wants to be trustworthy, you have to be consistent. You can't flip flop. Mm-hmm. Now you can change opinion. Hey, I used to think this.
Yeah.
But you know what? Now
I have more information.
So I'm going to change to this. So you can change.
But be honest about it.
Yeah. But the flip flop, special counsel is good. Oh, now it's bad because it doesn't fit my agenda. The other thing is, not everything is going to fit into the box. Sometimes we might have to adjust. If you have kids, I guess it's like, okay, you're 17, so your curfew's X. You're 12, your curfew's never. You have to stay home all the time. Whatever. There's different things. So, that's not fair. Well, it might not be fair, but in your instance, when you look at it, it's fair.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be uniform. There's going to be differences. And then the other thing too is you just have to kind of try to, be, so consistency, know that there's not one blanket thing for everything in the conversation. And then listen is the third thing I would say is if we can't listen, then we're not communicating. Mm-hmm. Because then hopefully through listening, we're hearing what the other person is saying, and then we can understand more about it. Mm-hmm. And then, hopefully then, honesty and truth comes out.
Yeah. And I would say also go back and look at the episodes that we've done on trust, because there's relational trust, there's functional trust, and all this boils down to trust. If you're an honest person, you're going to be trustworthy. If you don't lie, manipulate, play games, you're going to be, trustworthy. But go back. We did 2 full hours on, functional and relational trust. And that was at the beach, I believe. So you also get to watch the sunset on those episodes.
We are 2 Steps Ahead Podcast. Check us out on Instagram, TWO, 2 Steps Ahead Podcast. Click the link in the bio. All kinds of options to listen and watch us pop up. You can find me at Edem Rocks, EIDEMROCKS on Instagram. Check out radiowarp.com, 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. Pacific time on Mondays and Wednesdays. They can find you.
I am on Instagram at Tara Hoke Shiro, TARAHOKESCHIRO. There's also a link in my bio on Instagram where you can find the swag shop, the podcast video library, my blog, all kinds of good stuff.
Take your passion, make it happen. Let yourself be great, be kind, communicate, and don't be an a-hole.
Thanks, guys.